And 1, 2, and 3. Very exciting, I know. All right, people, let's get into it. I am Garrett, and it seems as though currently in the film indie tech scene, wireless monitoring, and field monitors for that matter, have kind of taken the forefront in the world of indie film because they have become so much more affordable. Affordable obviously being relative, everything in filmmaking is relative, but compared to traditional costs of what wireless monitoring solutions have been, it's never been more affordable than now, which is really cool because on very small budgets, we now are afforded some of the luxuries that up to this point have been reserved for more expensive, higher end, more traditional type shoots. And with each iteration that comes out, these companies are improving on the tech that the ones before them have done. And today is no exception. Today, we are looking at the Vaxis ATOM 500. Now, this is an HDMI wireless transmission system from Vaxis. Full disclosure, they sent this to me. I am not getting paid for my review, and all of this, of course, as always, is going to be my own opinions. Without further ado, let's take a look. Instructions. Cool. All right, so right off the bat, there are two pieces of hardware that look identical. In fact, the only thing from here that I can tell that makes them different is that one says TX for the transmitter and the other says RX. There seems to be a 90-degree angle, turning 1/4-20 for a hot shoe, so it'd be a cold shoe mount that I'm assuming is going to be for the transmitter. There is a single USB Type-C cable for, I would imagine, firmware updates on that. We have a 1/4-20 mounting plate. So this mounting plate again would be for one of these two. I would assume that you would use one for one and one for the other. And then screws and a hex key for said mounting plate. So now let's actually look at the units. Again, they look identical. It is a metal body, feels really, really good and well built. The tops of each are plastic, but these are the antennae. I do like that the antenna in each of these is built in. There's no prongs that are hanging out that could break off or need to be replaced. And the fact that it's built in keeps it compact and neat while not having to worry about or think about it. On the back, we have the battery plate. This is for a standard Sony L battery or an NPF series battery with an eject button on the side. On this end, we have a 1/4-20 with the power toggle on the bottom. There's another 1/4-20. On the front, we have again this cold shoe adapter plate mount, which we may or may not use depending on how this goes. There is a screen here, which is kind of hidden there, kind of cool. There are 3 buttons that are flush with the body or near flush. On the last side here, we have these holes. This is going to be a vent because this is an active fan cooled system. We have our 2 HDMI ports. Again, this is a loop through system, meaning that the same video signal that gets put into this can hardwire come out of this. So if we have a secondary monitor or if we have an EVF that we want to send this through, this isn't going to act as a dead point, which for me is an absolute must in a wireless system. And here at the bottom, we have the USB Type-C port. That would be both for firmware updates as well as power, which is why it says USB/DC here. So that is the transmitter. The receiver looks completely identical. The only interesting thing here on this HDMI is that there are 2 HDMI outs. So I don't know why you would have 2 HDMI outs unless you had like a separate client monitor or like a producer's monitor and then a Video Village monitor, or you were running it to DIT and Video Village at the same time. It's a cool option. I'd be curious to know who would be using both simultaneously, but it's really, really cool to have that. I've actually never seen that before, so that's kind of neat. The only other difference with the receiver from the transmitter is that the only 1/4-20 on this is on the bottom. There is no side corner 20 in the same way that the quarter 20 is on the transmitter. That's probably because you don't need to necessarily worry about this being as compact or tightly put down in the same way that you would with the transmitter. But to mount the transmitter onto a camera, we of course have either this mounting plate here with the quarter 20, or we have this pre-made quarter 22 cold shoe here. So we can either mount that vertically or horizontally, depending on how we wanted it to be rigged in our camera. But the other nice thing is that once we have it tightened down like this, we can get it to bend even up to like a 90-degree angle in either direction. So keeping it really slim and streamlined, which I like. Now, because this receiver only has the one quarter 20, that makes me want to mount this plate onto the receiver, so then we could kind of have other mounting options that might be a little bit more streamlined than just mounting it on the bottom there. Let's get this hooked up and see exactly how it works. All right, so let's power these on here. Again, on the sides, there are these power switches here, and you will see that the Vaxis logo pops up and then they both fire on. So again, now they do have active fan cooling, which means that there is a fan literally blowing air through this, and you can hear it. Can you hear it? Yeah, so that's the sound. Now, it's definitely not loud enough to interfere with your audio, so definitely don't be worried about that. The only time I would think that you might be able to hear it is that if you have these both mounted on top of the camera and you have like a little shotgun microphone on one side and then this is like blowing out air onto the microphone on the other side, you'd probably hear that, but either switch the sides or just don't mount them at the exact same point and you'll be fine. But like sitting here, you obviously can't hear it while I'm talking to you, so it really shouldn't be that big of a deal. Across the top, on the top left, we have the signal strength. On the top right, we have the video signal, so that would be the frame rate and the resolution. Then in the middle, we have the temperature on the left. It's measured in Celsius. I couldn't figure out how to make that Fahrenheit. And then on the right is the channel. Now, across the bottom, on the bottom left, we have our fan, and on the bottom right, there is the battery, which will show you the voltage that it's receiving, as well as the amount of battery that's left. When you turn it on, once these are paired together, they will automatically pair when you turn them on and find the best channel to transmit the signal on, which will give the least amount of interference. It's a really sweet feature because you don't then have to go hunting for the right channel to give you the least amount of noise in your signal. It does that all for you. To put them in pairing mode, we press and hold these center buttons. That's going to pull up our settings menu on both. If we push them again, you'll see that then where it says off under pairing, it now is highlighted. We can either use the left or rightmost button to adjust that. We can see that we've toggled them to on, and then we push the center button again to select that. Now they're going to be looking for each other, and of course, because we don't have any other ones here in the studio, they're gonna just find each other. The rest of the settings, so at the top we have pairing. If I go with the rightmost button, that's my down signal. OSD is the next option. Beneath that we have our SSID, that's our Wi-Fi network name. So again, when we get into the phone, we can then talk about that. Underneath that, we then have the password, and the password fortunately isn't just like 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8. It's an actual numeric password. So then when we of course try to log in, we have to enter that as well. Underneath password, we then have our priority, and there are two options. You can either set the priority to latency, meaning that it is going to give you the fastest video signal possible, or you can set it to image, which is going to give you the highest quality resolution possible. Underneath that, we have the version number. This will show you what firmware you are currently running. You can update that either with the USB Type-C or with the iOS or Android app. And then at the bottom, we then have return, which if we push, takes us back to the main menu. So really, really simple, really intuitive. To adjust the fan, real simple. You press and hold the leftmost button here until you see fan auto start to blink. And then again, you can press that leftmost button and toggle between fan off, fan low, fan high, and fan auto. When you're done, you just let it go and it will default back. It'll go from blinking to being solid, and it will then stay on whatever setting that you had it on. The other thing that this does really, really well is that it has an iOS and Android app, meaning that not only will it send a signal directly to the receiver, but it will then also send that same signal to multiple iOS devices, in effect, giving you multiple monitors to watch the stream wirelessly. The app is called Vaxis Vision, and when you open it, it will default to this, which will say connect to device. And if I say connect to device, it will take me to a screen where I need to put in the SSID and password that this ad hoc signal is going to be sending out. Again, to get to that, you press and hold the center button. It will take you to your menu settings, and then we go down to where it says SSID, type it in exactly as it says, go to password, and again, type that in exactly as it says, and then hit the connect. It will then ask if you want to join the network, and it will then open up to the screen. The screen will then, of course, show the same signal that is being sent from the transmitter to the receiver, which in this case is nothing, but this is how the app looks. Now, I gotta be honest, it's not the best app I have seen, in that a lot of the other apps from some of the other wireless manufacturers give you some options in looking at and understanding your image. Like some of them you can load LUTs into, so that way you can kind of get a look preview. Some of them give you a little bit more kind of professional monitoring options. For this, you really only have focus peaking and you have zebra. So you'll know if things are going to be overexposed to a certain degree, or you'll know, what is or is not in focus to a certain degree. But beyond that, we don't have a whole lot of control. Over here in the settings function here, we have the brightness, contrast, and sharpness of the video signal that's coming in, as well as our focus peaking sensitivity, and then our zebra threshold. But other than that, it's a really stripped down app. We have a security box here, a grayscale, and a center mark. Again, really simple things, nothing too crazy to write home about. I can either snap a quick photo or record a video of the screen, so I can kind of have a reference from the phone. Now, I tested this with two different cameras, the GH5S, which is what you're looking at me at here, and then the G85, which is what you're looking at me up here. With the GH5S, the frame rate that I was getting in this signal was about 15 frames per second. It was not a true 24, which wouldn't be usable for like focus pulling or AC work or any of that kind of stuff. It would be fine if it was just a reference monitor for Video Village or a director's monitor, that kind of thing. That said, I didn't have the same issue with the G85. When I had this system all plugged into that camera, I was getting the same frame rate here as I was there, but just know with the two cameras that I tested, I was getting different frame rate results just in the app. Not the end of the world by any means, and I don't know what cameras that you guys are rocking, but that's just something that I experienced. Now that we have everything paired and synced and the app is all working, let's hook this up to a camera and let's talk latency. Now it's all hooked up. It does not come with its own HDMI cables, so you want to make sure that you have the right cables in the right lengths for the camera that you have. In this case, for the G85, I've got a micro HDMI to full HDMI cable in my preferred length, which is generally a foot or less. It keeps everything nice and tight. This is the small HD focus monitor that I have this signal being fed into. Again, with this particular mount, I can loosen this mount here and then just kind of fold this forward and tighten it down again. That way it's not just kind of like standing up on its end. And then of course, if I need to adjust anything in the menu, I can bring it back here and adjust it just like that. So that's where this comes in really handy. One thing that I will note about the way that the cold shoe connection works, if you tighten it down to connect here, it loosens the top to where this thing swivels fairly freely. And then if you tighten it up so it doesn't swivel, it then loosens the connection onto the hot shoe of the camera. So it almost should be like two pieces, one that goes up and one that goes down. I have a lot of connectors that do that, but this one only has one. So that is kind of a bummer, especially if you're working with this and then it starts to swing like that. So keep that in mind. Generally, I have the camera rigged out and I would be using a cage or some sort of 1/4-20 cheese plate on it, and I would use things like friction arms. That said, if you want to mount it like this, just keep that in mind. You can see here that I have the camera, the monitors facing you, so you can kind of see just the standard latency from real time to a camera monitor. The transmitter, of course, is emitting both the signal for the receiver as well as for the app, the Wi-Fi app for the phone, so you can then see the latency here as well. So I'm just going to count to 3. Not a very scientific test, but it'll give you an idea kind of what delay you can expect to see. So if I come here like this, I put my hand here and then I go 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, and 3. So again, here, small but hardly noticeable delay, and then with these two, they are equal, which I think is actually really interesting that they were able to figure out how to emit the Wi-Fi signal at the same speed at which the regular signal is for the receiver. So you can have your devices receiving the same speed of a signal as your Video Village or Director's Monitor and that kind of thing, which is a really, really awesome feature, and I don't know how they did it. So again, one last time here, let's go here, make sure we're in frame, and 1, 2, and 3. Very exciting, I know. In the world of wireless transmission systems, the Vaxis ATOM 500 makes a very compelling argument. The fact that it has 2 HDMI outs for 2 separate receiver professional grade monitors, while also having the Android and iOS app, gives you the option to see a ton of different monitors and have multiple people who may need the video signal access to it. The transmitter not being an endpoint, being a loop through, having that HDMI in and out is also something that makes it a very, very unique option in this space, and something that for me is an absolute must. Tons of mounting points for this. I like the fact that you can both power as well as update via the USB Type-C. So if you wanted to, you wouldn't have to put the batteries on it, but you could be running it off of universal power via that USB cable. I love the fact that the antennae are built directly into the unit, so there's not, things that are pushing off the sides. It's all kind of in a single built kind of cohesive package. It's all metal, it's all well constructed, it's really, really simple to operate, and I really, really dig it. I do wish that there was a little bit more in the app, making it a little bit more of a production grade monitor, but that's something that's super easy in updating the app itself. So that's not a big deal. I hope that they do that, but I hope that you found this helpful. And if you did, do me a favor, give this video a like. If you want to see more stuff like this, hit subscribe. And as always, I'll see you in the next episode.